Hello and welcome to tonight's show. Tonight we're diving deep into the wonderful world of pork, or more specifically, a controversial chemical lurking in a lot of American pork products. Now I know what you're thinking. John, pork's not exactly a laugh riot, and you'd be right. But trust me, the story of ractopamine, a drug fed to most pigs in the United States, is more messed up than a plate of undercooked bacon. We're talking potential health risks, questionable ethics, and enough international controversy to make your head spin faster than a pig on a spit. So buckle up, folks, because this is one porky problem you won't want to miss. Let's start with the basics. What the heck is ractopamine? In short, it's a drug that belongs to a class of compounds called beta agonists. Sounds sciencey, right? Well, here's the simpler version. Ractopamine is basically a growth promoter. Farmers add it to pig feed to make pigs grow bigger, leaner, and faster. Sounds like a win-win for the pork industry, right? More meat, less time, higher profits. But like most things that sound too good to be true, there's a catch. And in this case, that catch involves potential health risks for both pigs and the people who eat them. Because you see, while ractopamine might be good for boosting pork production, its impact on the well-being of the pigs and consumers is a whole other story. And that, my friends, is where things start to get really interesting. Now, you might think that a drug used in food production would be subject to, rigorous safety standards and global consensus. Well, you'd be wrong. The reality is far more complex and concerning. See, over 160 countries around the world, including the entire European Union, China, and Russia, have banned ractopamine in pork production. This isn't just a minor disagreement, it's a significant global stance. They cite concerns about its impact on human health, including potential cardiovascular problems, muscle tremors, and even behavioral changes. These aren't just hypothetical risks, they're backed by scientific studies and real-world observations. These countries have looked at the available evidence and said, nope, not worth the risk. Their decision is based on a thorough analysis of the data, prioritizing the well-being of their populations. They'd rather prioritize the health of their citizens than bow to pressure from the pork industry. This is a clear example of putting public health above commercial interests. But here in the good old United States of America, we're all about that ractopamine life. Despite the global consensus, the US continues to allow its use, raising questions about our regulatory priorities. It's enough to make you wonder, what do these 160 other countries know that we don't? Or perhaps what are we choosing to overlook in favor of industry profits? Or perhaps more accurately, what are we choosing to ignore? The debate continues, but the stakes couldn't be higher when it comes to the food we consume and the health of our communities. Now you might think that the United States pork industry would be a little embarrassed, even a tad bit introspective, about the fact that most of the world wants nothing to do with their ractopamine-laced pork. This controversial additive, banned in over 160 countries, has been a point of contention for years. But you'd be wrong again. Instead of reflecting on the global rejection, they seem to be doubling down. Instead of, maybe reconsidering their use of a controversial drug, the National Pork Producers Council, NPPC, has been busy trying to strong-arm other countries into accepting their Franken pork. They have been relentless in their lobbying efforts, pushing their agenda with an almost aggressive fervor. They even had the audacity to try and pressure the European Union into lifting its ban on ractopamine, claiming it was a trade barrier. This ban, which is based on scientific research and public health concerns, is seen as a non-negotiable by the EU. Because apparently, protecting the health of their citizens is just a minor inconvenience for the almighty pork industry. The NPPC's stance seems to prioritize profit over people, a troubling perspective. The EU, thankfully, wasn't buying it. They stood their ground, refusing to compromise on their stringent food safety standards. They stood firm on their ban, prioritizing science and safety over the NPPC's porky profits. The EU's commitment to public health and safety is commendable and serves as a model for other nations. But the fact that the NPPC even tried this stunt speaks volumes about their priorities. It highlights a stark contrast between profit-driven motives and the essential need to protect public health. Section 5, Troubling Signs, the FDA's own findings and adverse events. Now, if you're thinking surely the FDA, our trusty food safety watchdog, has this whole ractopamine thing under control, well, think again. The reality is far more complex and concerning than you might expect. Even the FDA, known for its, shall we say, cozy relationship with the industries it regulates, has acknowledged potential concerns about ractopamine. This isn't just a minor footnote in their reports, it's a significant red flag. Their own studies have shown that the drug can cause increased heart rates, heart abnormalities, and even death in pigs. These findings are not isolated incidents but part of a broader pattern of distress and suffering among animals exposed to ractopamine. And it's not just the pigs that are suffering. The ripple effects extend beyond the farm. The FDA's own records show a disturbing trend of adverse events in humans linked to ractopamine-tainted meat, including things like heart problems, muscle tremors, and even psychiatric symptoms. These are not just minor complaints but serious health issues that can have long-term consequences. Now, to be fair, the FDA claims that these reports are anecdotal and not necessarily proof of causation. However, the sheer volume and consistency of these reports cannot be easily dismissed. But when you've got smoke billowing out from under the door, you don't just sit there and say, well, it might just be a really intense fog machine. You investigate. The stakes are too high to ignore these warning signs. The health and well-being of both animals and humans are at risk, and it's crucial that we take these findings seriously and demand more rigorous oversight and transparency from our regulatory bodies. Section 6. Ethical Eating, Ractopamine, and the Question of Animal Welfare. Now, let's move beyond the potential health risks for a moment and talk about the ethical implications of pumping pigs full of growth hormones. Because here's the thing. Ractopamine doesn't just magically make pigs bigger, it forces them to grow at an unnatural rate, putting immense strain on their bodies. Imagine being forced to gain weight at an accelerated pace, your heart racing, your joints aching, your body pushed to its absolute limit. That's the reality for millions of pigs in the US every single year. And for what? So we can have slightly cheaper bacon? So the pork industry can rake in even more profits? It's enough to make you lose your appetite. Section 7. A crate by any other name comparing ractopamine to gestation crates. Now, some of you might be thinking, John, this all sounds a bit dramatic, it's just pork, right? But here's the thing. The use of ractopamine is part of a larger system of industrialized animal agriculture that prioritizes profit over the well-being of animals, and frankly, the health of consumers. It's in the same ethical ballpark as gestation crates, those inhumane cages that confine pregnant pigs to spaces so small they can't even turn around. The EU, by the way, has banned those too. Both practices are cruel, both are unnecessary, and both highlight the dark side of our modern food system. And just like with gestation crates, we have a choice to make: continue to support these practices through our consumption choices, or demand better. Section 8. Turning the tide companies, reducing ractopamine use. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. The good news is that change is happening, even if it's happening slowly. Some major pork producers, like Smithfield Foods, the largest pork producer in the world, have started to reduce or eliminate their use of ractopamine. Why? Because they're feeling the pressure, both from consumers who are increasingly concerned about the food they eat and from trading partners who are demanding higher welfare standards. This is a step in the right direction, but it's not enough. We need to keep the pressure on, both on pork producers and on our elected officials, to create a food system that prioritizes the well-being of animals and the health of people over corporate profits. Section 9. The Consumer's Dilemma. Navigating the grocery aisle. So what can you, the average grocery shopper, do about all of this? Well, for starters, you can start paying attention to where your pork comes from. Look for labels that say ractopamine-free or raised without ractopamine. You can also support companies that are committed to higher animal welfare standards, like those that are phasing out gestation crates and reducing their use of antibiotics. Yes, it might require a bit more effort, and yes, it might mean spending a little bit more money, but isn't your health and the well-being of the animals we raise for food worth it? Section 10. Demand better. Your voice matters in the fight against ractopamine. Beyond your individual choices at the grocery store, you can also make your voice heard in the fight against ractopamine. Contact your elected officials and let them know that you support policies that promote higher animal welfare standards and protect consumers from potentially harmful drugs in their food. Support organizations that are working to reform the agricultural industry and create a more just and sustainable food system. Remember, change doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen without sustained pressure from concerned citizens like you. Section 11. A future without ractopamine. A healthier path for pigs, people, and the planet. So there you have it, folks. The not-so-appetizing truth about ractopamine in your pork. But it's not a hopeless situation. By raising awareness, demanding better from our food system, and making informed choices as consumers, we can create a future where pigs aren't pumped full of drugs, where consumers don't have to worry about hidden risks in their food, and where the pursuit of profit doesn't come at the expense of animal welfare and public health. It's time to say, enough is enough to the pork industry's reckless use of ractopamine. Let's demand a higher standard, for ourselves, for the animals, and for the future of our food system. And on that note, I'm off to grab a veggie burger. See you next time.